I'm going to be going live here just a second and presenting a lesson uh, from the subject of I didn't ask for this. Um, the reality is that we are in a situation and a fight to um, understand and process um, this challenge that we're in. And I believe that as we continue to um, press forward in what God has assigned to us to do, that we're going to position ourselves to do some amazing things. And so, as I prepare to get ready to share this lesson, just wanted to get it on tape. We shared it this morning during our service, but I wanted to possibly get it recorded so that I could share it as well um, later on with those that may not be able to conform to the time. So my name is Russell Smyre, Bishop Russell Smyre. Excited to be able to um, share with you um, this morning in regards to uh, subject matter that the Lord has given me to share. And I believe that as we delve into this, it will hopefully um, uh, give us an opportunity um, to maximize um, some things that God has blessed us with. So let's get set up here and get rid of some of this clutter. Um, all right. Hello? Hello? Edit video. Okay. It's not good. Playing with this. Is it possible? Yes, no. Hello? Okay. I think. I'm thinking that's how I would do it. Mm-hmm. So today's lesson I wanted to teach on was how to survive, revive, and thrive, and in change. You didn't ask for. This is some change that we asked for. The reality is, we're in a situation in a time where things are changing within regards to um, the world on the world stage. Just we're literally seeing this epidemic that is taking place, and I think if you're not careful, we can lose our focus and what we should really be locked in and focused on in regards to who Christ is and who God is. And, the Bible is pretty clear. It instructs us that we are to magnify the Lord and to exalt him together. But we're in a season at a time right now where it seems like the world is magnifying the epidemic, magnifying the corona, magnifying the deaths, magnifying all the things that are not healthy for us to magnify. And I'm not discrediting or belittling the challenge that we're facing, because the reality is, this is a tough season and time for us. But I do want to encourage you that there is life beyond this change. And if we can go through it with the right mindset and the right focus, then we can position ourselves to where we can make a difference in our lives, and it'll make us better and not bitter through the process. So I want to talk to you about a couple of different things that we're going to share. The Bible is pretty clear. We'll read the text in a little bit, but talks about Jesus, where he encounters and tells a story of two men, one wise, one foolish. And he gives this illustration about this storm, this one storm that's going to come. Both of the men in the book of Matthew, it details and how they both heard the word, heard what the Lord was saying, instructions he was given, but there was a response to what they heard. One uh, kind of followed through or was obedient to the word that he heard and did what the word was spoken, what he heard. He put action to what he actually heard and implemented it in his life. And the Bible attributes that man as building on a rock. And then there's another a gentleman who heard the same word, had to deal with the same storm, but he did not do what he or put action to or follow through, or you could say even he disobeyed what he had heard from his Lord. And as a result, the Bible was attributed him as being a foolish man. And the outcome of their lives was totally different. And so I want to talk to you this morning about change and really be able to, our goal is to hopefully to inspire you and hopefully to create in you a positive mindset, a growth mindset, if you will, a spiritual mindset approach to the challenges that we're facing, rather than using fear and using a fixed mindset. So when we talk about change, there is real simple. There's a couple things here. Life, number one, three things I can open up and share with you about what we're facing and what we're dealing with. Life guarantees change will happen. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you're dealing with, and where you're going through. If you keep living, it is guaranteed that things will change in your life. We'll get older, our hair will get thinner, it will change colors, our bodies will begin to droop from sag because of the gravity, and we can do all we can to keep them up. But even the reality is our bodies change. It takes us longer to recover. We Our mind changes. Everything we do, our metabolism slows down. We see life from a different perspective. But the one thing that's guaranteed is that life guarantees that change will happen. If you're living, it's a result of you changing. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is change releases the emotions, fear. It releases emotions, I should say. It releases emotions, some good emotions, some bad. Depends on where the mindset is. It determines what emotions are released. And so, if we have the right mindset, if we have a growth mindset, then we'll find ourselves releasing more healthier emotions as we are facing change that we have to face. If we have a fixed mindset, then we'll find ourselves in a position where there's no other options but to deal with what we're dealing with. Then we will find ourselves releasing the emotion of fear, anxiousness, anxiety. All those things can kick in. So the mindset determines what emotions is released, but change will release emotions that is within us. Uh, the third thing is that when change happens, it's happening. we often will feel a sense of no control or a sense of losing control. Because when change takes place in our life, when it's taking place around us, it's often taking place on its own narrative. I mean, the coronavirus doesn't need a passport. Uh, it doesn't need it doesn't need permission. It doesn't need um, you to invite it in, doesn't need invitation. It literally is moving about and moving in places, literally on its own in a sense. Because if you're around people, then this is literally taking place and nobody has control of it. And that's one of the fights that we're in right now is how do we gain control over this movement of this virus? And I think, and that's a reality. It's almost like sin. It's very comparable to sin. It looks like it's moving about, invading itself wherever it's allowed to get access. Then it's moving about and transition from person to person, and it's literally an epidemic that is growing faster than we can control. So change, when change is happening, we often feel a sense of no control. But there's some good news. I do want to give you some good news. Here's the good news: God has a plan for your life, and His plan for your life is not to always be in this epidemic situation. The world has been through situations and challenges where it has been epidemic and challenging. So I just want to encourage you that it's not going to always be this way, but more importantly, God has a plan for your life. So the question is, if He has a plan, what is His plan for my life? Well, Jeremiah chapter 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So we know now that when we're dealing with this change that's taking place, it's important for us to understand that God has a plan for us. Number one. Number two, this plan involves prosperity. It involves Him protecting us, keeping us from harm. It involves Him um, giving us hope. It involves having a future. So God has a future. He loves you enough that He's thought about your future, your hope, your tomorrow, and He has went into your tomorrow and made preparations for you to exist in it. It's important that we have the faith and trust in that. The next thing I want to talk about is that we know that here's some more good news. Because He has a plan, because He desires for us to prosper, because He has hope for us and a future for us. It's good to know that Malachi 3:6 says, "I, the Lord, do not change, so your descendants of Jacob's are not destroyed." In other words, He doesn't change, and He will protect us. He will keep us from hurt, harm, and danger. And His plan, although the world is changing and this epidemic is arising, it does not negate the fact that God has a plan for us. He has hope for us, and He has a future prepared for us. And because He has those things, and He said that in His Word, we also know that He does not change. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is, as a result, because God doesn't change, we know that because the Bible says God is not human, that He should lie, not a human being, that He should change His mind. Does He speak, then not act? Does He promise and not fulfill? So we know now that God is not one that will change His mind. His decisions, His mindset toward us is that He loves us. He will always love us. He will never forsake us. He'll always be there with us. And that gives us peace. It gives us a comfort because we know that God is on our side. Matter of fact, He is our rock. Psalms 18:2 says, "The Lord is my rock. He's my fortress and He's my deliverer, my rock. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold." He's the place where I can reside to, I can retreat to, I can go to and find a place. A stronghold means that it's a place that protects you. It's a place that is set up and designed to keep everything in and everything else out. So my God is a stronghold. Our God is a stronghold, and He desires for us to be able to run to Him, and He will protect us through the process. Now, there are 7 truths that I want to talk about in regards to about change. 7 truths about change as we get into this. Number one, change. Truth number one is change is the one thing you can count on. It's the one thing you can count on. To everything Ecclesiastes 3:1 says this: to everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. There's a season and a time and a purpose and a time, excuse me, to every purpose under heaven. So one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing as we're dealing with this challenging time is that we want to make sure that we understand now that change is going to happen. You got to wrap your mind around the fact that change is going to happen. You don't have to accept it for it to happen, but it's going to happen. But we need to know that when it's set in place, it's going to happen. It's like seasons and time. They rotate. They do what they do. You know, they come and they go. Nights come, days come. Nights go, days go. Evening comes, evening goes. It's change is one thing you can count on. And if we can learn to understand the seasons and times, it will and the purpose that God has for us, then it will help us to be able to navigate through the times in a more formidable way. The second truth is that about change is that it's not personal. Change is not personal. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. It's not personal. It's not personal if you plant seed at the wrong time of the year and the times change and you lose your seed. It's not personal if you're hoping that it's going to be cool today, but it's actually hot today. That's not personal. So I just want to encourage you to understand that those things will those things are going to take place, and it's not personal. It's a matter of there are things that are set in place that have been put in place that are going to navigate and move about their business and take place, and it's not a personal attack. God is not angry at you as an individual. He's not upset with you as an individual. He's not out to get you as an individual. He loves us. He has a future and a hope and a purpose for us. Change. Your thinking is not always your friend. That's is truth number three. Your thinking is not always your friend. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That works. We know that works consistently, and how our mindset determines who we are, who we become, where we go, who we hang out with. All those things. Your thoughts drive everything. Where the mind goes often enough, the body will soon follow. So it's important now that we understand that our thinking is not always our best friend. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. This is what God says, declares the Lord. He says, my ways are not your ways. Is in the book of Isaiah, chapter 55, verses 8 through 9. He begins to talk about the differences between how he thinks and we think. And there are times when our mind needs to be aligned with God, but it will oftentimes drift off course. It will drift off course. And it's like a car that's out of line. If you don't keep your hand on the steering wheel, it's going to be very difficult to keep it in the road. So your thinking is not always your friend. Doesn't mean that your thinking is evil. Doesn't mean that your thinking is bad. It just means that there's sometimes we can get into an epidemic situation and your mind and thoughts can start to go array. And you have to be able to understand that my thinking is not always my friend. So I want to be able to pull it in, cast down any vain imagination, pull my thoughts together, and bring them under the authority of who God is and what he says in his word. That's your responsibility. Change truth number 4 is change isn't the enemy. He's not the enemy. Fear is the enemy. Change is not the enemy. Fear is the enemy. So God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind, which suggests now that we understand that when fear comes into play, that's not God. He doesn't want us to operate with a spirit of fear, but he wants us to operate with a spirit of power, a spirit of love, and a spirit of a sound mind, which means that power means, in a sense, it means that you're in control. I'm able to love, and I'm able to make sound decisions with a sound mind. Fear, change is not the enemy, but fear is really my enemy that we're dealing with. Change truth number 5 is there's a predictable emotional cycle to change. When change comes into place, when change comes into place, there's a predictable emotional cycle to change. The more you understand, the less you will fear. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom with all thy getting. Get understanding. So, one of the key things here is that the more you understand, the less you will fear. Oftentimes, fear preys on the ignorance, the false information. It preys on us getting error information, information with error in it, erroneous information. And a lot of times you'll see it begin to take you down a pathway that is not healthy for you. It begin to cause certain emotions to arise in your life and can put you in a challenging situation. So just wanted to encourage you that there's a predictable emotional cycle to change that takes place. And when you really understand that predictable cycle, how it works is with when change happens. I don't have this in the notes, but change happens first. You can't do anything about that. After it happens, then we have the option to either accept the change or reject the change or to ignore the change, or you can be a part of the change. But one thing about it is you have the choice whether to accept the change or not. You can act like it didn't happen, but that's not healthy, because if it happened, it really happened. You can act like Corona doesn't exist, but the reality is it does exist. So we have to accept that fact, accept that change. There's a change in the world. We can't go and come as we want. We can't hug and cuddle as we want, so to speak. We can't touch everybody and enter into everybody's circle, social circle. So that's a change that has happened. We got to accept that fact. And so we have to make choices and decisions as to how we're going to move about after that fact. The second thing that happens is after change happens is you accept the change, and then next you have the option to expand your options. Expand your options. In other words, this has happened. What are my options? Rather than look at what is restricted, you want to be able to look at what are my options that I can actually implement and go forward. Expanding my options. And then the next thing you want to look at is to be able to take action. Can I take action with the options that now I see that are available to me? We're using Zoom now. We're using YouTube. We're using live Facebook Live. We're using all these avenues of platforms because those are options. And so we had to expand our options. Even if it was something that you didn't do before, you had to expand those options now and tap into that. And take action with that. And then the last component is you want to be able to strengthen your adaptability, meaning that now that I accepted the change, I've expanded my options, I've taken action, then I want to strengthen my adaptability. In other words, I don't want all of this change that I'm facing and that I'm having to deal with and go through to make me weaker or make me bitter. I want to make my environment in a situation where it makes me better. You can be better from this situation and what you're in and what you're dealing with if you understand that it's a predictable changes. There's a predictable emotional cycle to change. That way you can make the emotional cycle of change to work to your advantage. Remember, I said that emotions are released from change, but it depends on the mindset you have as to which emotions are released, whether it releases fear, whether it releases faith and hope and love. It depends on the mindset as you look at it. So, number six, you're more resilient than you may think. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trials, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. What are you saying? What I'm saying is, despite how challenging this situation, there are going to be some people that die from it. There are going to be some people that are not going to get through this process. But I want you to know that you're more resilient than you may think. I mean, think about this. You have injected things into your body. You have done, there are some of us have done some things that are, we don't even know how we survived the night we were in and gotten through it and survived. We have done some things that we can't even share with people that we have survived and overcome and gotten through it. And the fact that you're here listening to this right now suggests that you're more resilient than you may think you are. So I just want to encourage you, don't let the fear make you feel like you cannot get through this. You will get through this and you will come out on top, and God is going to bless you and make you stronger and better through the process. And the last truth, change truth, not the last one, but the last one we're dealing with today is your future is built on a bedrock that is unchanging. Your future is built on a rock. You want to make sure, remember the text, you want to make sure that we build our future on on a rock that is unchanging. And we understand by the Bible, 1 Corinthians 3:11, And it says, for no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3:11. It's important to understand that. So as we look at these seven changes, it's important now that we understand all of these changes. Number one, change truth. Change is the one thing you can count on. It's going to happen. Uh, True is it's not personal. You have to take it personal. Don't get in a fight with change. It's going to happen. It's going to do what it's going to do. Number three, um, your thinking is not always your friend. So you got to be able to check your thinking. You got to make sure you don't have that stinking thinking. Make sure you check it. And then also you want to understand that change isn't the enemy. Change is not the enemy, but rather fear is really the enemy. So you have to deal with fear. You got to fight fear and deal with that and begin to bring it under subjection. Number five, there's predictability, emotional cycles to change that we go through. There's a certain set of things that we go through, or you accept it or you reject it. You go back and forth. And then, of course, number six is change. Truth. Change. Truth is you're more resilient than you may think. Man, you can bounce back when times when you think you couldn't have. You just got to have the right mindset. And then, of course, number seven is you want to make sure your future is built on a rock. And so this brings us around to a point now where I want to talk to this. How do you survive the change that you didn't ask for? How do you survive and revive and thrive in the change you didn't ask for? This nobody asked for this season of time of social distancing and distancing, isolation, and all these terminology that create new words now. So the Bible says in Matthew 7:24, this is how you do it. He says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house now on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew, beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was what? Founded on a rock. So the key concepts is hears and does. You got to hear and do. You have to not only be a hearer only, but a doer of the word. That's why it's important that we hear God, but also that we do what he says. Do what he says. You have to have a plan to where you hear him, and then you have to have an execution, actual plan where you actually put into action what he has told you. The other guy, but everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them would be like a foolish man. He said, man, it's foolish to hear God and then don't do what he says to do. He says that man is compared to a person who built his house on the sand. Rain descended, floods came, the winds blew, beat on that house, and it fell, and great was it fall. So I just want to encourage you in that aspect to understand that concept. How do you survive and thrive and change you didn't ask for? It's real simple. You got to hear the word of the Lord, and you got to do the word of the Lord. You have to be wise and harmless. You have to gain understanding of what he's sharing with you and what he's instructing us to do. Being anointed does not mean that you're stupid. It means that you have this power, this ability to do what you're not capable of doing in your life. But it also means that you have to make wise and sound decisions with what God has given you. I hope this has been a blessing to you. Would love for to get some feedback. Post some comments in the bottom as to how you felt about this presentation. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a blessed day.